things like that.
Yeah,
There's a lot less opportunity.
yeah. Well, and you mean more interaction, more problems, more interactions between hunters are inevitable? Is that what you mean?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's right too. And so, what do we do? I've had this discussion. Senator Campson and I are close, as you know, and he and I have this debate on the Senate floor and in committee on a regular basis about what we do about this unprecedented migration into South Carolina and what that means for our natural resources and how we continue to have open resources to the public at this rate of migration. And what do we do, Ben? You've got the perspective of time. You got any ideas? How do we resolve this issue, or do we? Is it just inevitable one day we're going to be the minority? We're going to be overrun, and these folks are going to suck up all the resources we have.
Well, it used to be a big problem with allocating resources. Now it's allocating opportunities. And somehow or another, that's a problem y'all are going to have to solve up there in Columbia to figure out how to divvy up hunting times and hunting spaces so that everybody has an equal opportunity to go. And I don't think it's a situation where it's possible to stiff the Yankee migrants because they come with just as the same equal protections as everybody else.
Sure.
But it's going to be a real dilemma for y'all to put your thinking caps on and come up with a equitable solution.
Right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think it's the challenge of this generation, of my generation. I'll call it my generation. I think that's the challenge of my generation for the next group of public servants that come along in South Carolina is to try to figure out how to appropriately allocate these resources based on the dwindling amount of land and the alarmingly increasingly populace of people from other states. It is an interesting conundrum, but it needs to be addressed. I mean, it really does. It's not, and this is not a slight by any means on folks from the Northeast. We understand why you want to come here. It's a great place to live. I've lived here my entire life. I think you have too. And, fantastic place to live, fantastic place if you are as passionate about the outdoors as we are. So I get it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't problems that are associated with that. Ben, I got one more question for you, if I can. Did you have
Sure.
Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, you go ahead with your question.
So I like to end with this question. I should have given you a heads up. I was going to ask you this so that you could be thinking about it. But I just asked Jim Shockey on our last podcast this question, and he didn't know how to answer either. But he did eventually come up with a great answer. But here's the question. So you've been a prolific writer. You've written a lot of your stories down over the years, and I'm sure you've told them all in great oral history as well. But I want to hear something from you that you haven't given the public. I want to know something about you or your history or, about your profession that you haven't told the public before. And if you need to dig for a minute, go ahead and take a minute to dig. But this is what I like to ask everybody. Tell me something that hasn't been told before. You got a story or something you can tell us?
Uh, well, I'm thinking. I think the only reason I would have a untold story is it is buried deeply.
That would have been my answer, I can promise you.
I know I know the feeling.
It might fall into the I don't think I'd have told that if I were you type story.
Is the statute of limitations passed? That's all we need.
That's right.
That's all we need to know. Has the statute of limitations passed? Yeah.
Well, it was always a surprise to me in court cases where we would find a violation and hail the violator in court to arrive at the court and the judge tell me to break out a letter from one of your colleagues in the Senate or the House asking her
Yeah, I know where this is going.
special favors to cut or to help, I think was the big word, his or her friend out of the dilemma he was in. And I kept a bunch of those letters, most of which I have gotten rid of because I don't think they would serve any good purpose now.
Right.
And I think I made scant mention of that in the book. But I think that Murdaugh case down in Colleton County exposed some of that. In the voting case, where everybody is scared to approach a powerful member of the power structure in our various counties.
Yeah.
Now, I ran into a little of that. But we had recourse to take cases to federal court if we thought there was any official interference locally,
Right.
particularly where they were federal laws like duck or dove hunting or something on that order.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, right? I mean, I got to say that's a good one, and I appreciate it. You know, I always enjoy facing tough. I always enjoy criticism, and I always enjoy facing tough comments. And there was certainly a time, and probably still is a time, where my profession went through a period of discomfort, and I'll put it on the record. My granddaddy was in the legislature in the '60s, and he told me one time that he had been given the keys to a brand new Cadillac, and it was the happiest day he had spent in the General Assembly until he realized what he had to do to keep the Cadillac. And he gave the keys back, to his credit. But it's a good demonstration of exactly what you're talking about. You know, South Carolina, everybody says South Carolina is in the New South now. But I got to tell you, politics in South Carolina is a blood sport. Always has, and I think it always will be. I don't think it's changed in that way. And you know, there are and certainly were a lot more then than there are now, the dark corners of South Carolina politics where persuasion and political will and powerful families come into play. There's no denying that. I don't think there's anybody listening to the sound of my voice that can deny that. And I appreciate you bringing it up. That's certainly one of the more powerful tell me something in public that you have never said. I think that's one of the more powerful ones. And I appreciate you saying it. I do. I appreciate you saying it.
I hope I don't get in any trouble, and I hope nobody else does either.
No, you won't. You won't. These are things that we have to address in some shape or form in order to become better as a body politic, as a society. And so thank you for your courage, and thank you for your bravery, and thank you for your service to this state for all those many years. You've been a fantastic public servant and law enforcement officer. Everybody in South Carolina knows your name or should know your name. And I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to call you a friend. And I'd like to take one last second to plug your book. Plug your book, Ben.
Well, it's a memoir called Ramblings of a Lowcountry Game Warden that kind of reviews the various aspects of my job over 25 years. And I think in the acknowledgments, I've acknowledged the South Carolina for letting me have a job that gave me so much pleasure over so many years. But some people have said that it's probably one of the most humorous books they've ever read, although it didn't start out to be a book of humor.
But it is. I've got to tell you, I've read it and I reread it maybe twice now, and it is one of the most entertaining, humorous books that I have read. And again, I think it's because you can identify. If you know these places, you know the issues. You've been in some of these situations yourself, and you can identify with exactly what you're going through, or at least imagine what you're going through. And I think people appreciate that. And you write it in such a concise and matter-of-fact sort of way. Fantastic writer, fantastic stories. And Ben, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We appreciate you. We appreciate your service. And I look forward to talking to you again, sir.
Well, thank you for inviting me on, and you have a hell of an editing job to do.
No, not at all. Hey, Ben, I'm sorry, this is English, and I'm going to chime in real quick. But after reading the excerpt on the Murphy's Law, I could completely see your Sarah being my Kinsley, who is my daughter, because she and I spent a lot of time pre-COVID or back in the early days of COVID on the water when school became virtual. Our virtual class became on the water, fishing, hunting, doing whatever. And a lot of times I spent with her, things go wrong on the boat with me. I call it organized chaos, quite frankly. But and she loves to laugh at Daddy. And she loves to do it just like Sarah, under the jacket, giggling, which, again, like Stephen mentioned, your book, I think, is, and I can't wait, it's my Valentine's gift this year. But your book, I'm sure, is going to touch somewhere in my, in my emotions, my feelings of growing up. My dad, unfortunately, was a golf pro and worked on the weekends. He was busy. I spent most of my time in the outdoors with friends, getting to experience the outdoors. And I spent a lot by myself, kind of teaching myself. But I did want to ask and mention and see if did you ever know Julian Prosser or Monk Jordan?
Neither one of those names strike a familiar note.
They were our DN officers over in Florence County when I was growing up. And you were mentioning the sneaking up. I'll tell you, I'll never forget. I just pulled my third shot. I just shot my third shot at a dove, and went to turn around to go back and get more shells. And I literally turned around and Julian was standing right behind